Okay, so today I'm gonna take you to the creek where I was inspired to make this drawing of the modern day Ophelia. And then we're gonna do a little ritual to give her a proper funeral. But first, we need to talk about what happens when a wild woman is forced to live her life as a good girl, because that's exactly what happened to Ophelia. And I know I'm not the only one obsessed with Ophelia, because there's been songs, art, even an entire movie just dedicated to her and exploring her perspective. And I think this is because not only is she iconic, but she's also the most relatable Shakespearean heroine. So many of us can really relate to the emotions and the pain and everything that she went through. So let's talk about it. First, let's do a quick recap of Ophelia's story. So Ophelia is the lover or the love interest of Hamlet, and when the story begins, both her father and her brother are kind of like, I don't know if you should do anything with him because he's the prince and we don't know if he really likes you. Ophelia tells her father, Hamlet's been super affectionate with me lately, he's been really into me, and her father is basically like, why would you believe anything a guy tells you? Like, are you dumb? And honestly, fair. Then Hamlet writes her this letter confessing his love. He gives her things. It's very possible that they were secretly intimate, and maybe he even got her pregnant, although that part is never really explicit. And then later, when he starts to unravel, Hamlet does a complete 180, and he's basically like, what are you talking about? I never gave you that. I never loved you. And he just discards her very ruthlessly. Meanwhile, as all these things are going on, Ophelia's father, Polonius, wants her to spy on Hamlet, and he basically uses her as a pawn in his own plotting and scheming. And so she's feeling all these very intense things to do with Hamlet, but because she's kind of trapped in this cage of men, she has to behave in ways that contradict what's actually going on in her heart. So then later, Hamlet bursts into his mother's room late at night, and he realizes that someone is spying on them from behind the tapestry, and he thinks it's Claudius, the person who killed his father. So he blindly stabs through the tapestry and kills the man, who turns out to be Polonius, Ophelia's father. So after this, Ophelia loses her mind. She goes mad, as they used to say. If my semi-boyfriend who may have knocked me up killed my father, I would probably lose my mind too. And so naturally, everyone just assumes that she has gone mad with grief over the death of her father, and that's why she's skipping around singing these raunchy songs and giving out these flowers to everybody. But obviously there's a lot more to it than that. Ophelia's madness is presented as being very sexually driven, and this is for historical reasons. Around the time of Shakespeare and then well into the 20th century, mental illness in men and women were conceptualized very differently. In men, it was usually considered something more intellectual, an affliction of the mind and reason, and we see that with Hamlet as he slowly starts to lose his marbles. But in women, mental illness was usually presented as a sexual thing, something akin to hysteria, even before hysteria was used as a clinical diagnosis. And this is definitely how Ophelia is characterized, but it's not just about sexuality and repression. The reason that she goes insane or goes mad is because she was forced to be a good girl. And this is what happens. Good girls constantly have to calibrate themselves to make sure that they are just enough of everything and not too much of anything. They have to be pretty and attractive enough, but never too sexual, God forbid. They have to be smart enough, but never smarter than the men around them. We all know this. To some extent, as women, we were all raised to be like this. Ophelia lived her life as the perfect good girl, and that is why she was beloved. She was constantly praised for how sweet she was and how much she pleased everyone. When Hamlet's mother announced her death, she says, "Oh, Ophelia was so sweet, she was so lovely, I wish that she would have been Hamlet's wife," etc., etc. But in reality, in her heart, she was a wild woman. She was full of passion and desire. And this desire is not just to do with sexuality or sex in a crude sense. Sexual energy is the life force. It's the source of all creation and all life, and it must be expressed or channeled in some way. Wild women need some kind of creative outlet for expression, whatever that might look like. They need to channel their life force energy into something, because when it stays inside, it eventually builds up and becomes destructive. But because everything Ophelia does is being controlled by the men in her life, she never has any outlet for this passion or this life force energy that she has. Living your life as a good girl can truly break you. It's how patriarchy makes women mentally ill. And when Ophelia goes mad, she escapes into the wilderness where she can finally be free. But sadly, it's too late, and she ends up drowning herself because she can't live like a good girl anymore. She's past the breaking point, but there's no place in society for her. So then, of course, Hamlet comes back, and he wails at her graveside about how much he loved her. And then her brother chimes in and is like, no, I loved her more. And Hamlet's like, no, I loved her more. And it just turns into a pissing contest between them. They get into a fight, even though neither of them really showed Ophelia that much love while she was alive. So let's go to the creek. First, I'm gonna gather some petals to do a ritual with. I love coming here because this little patch of wilderness is like the archetypal forest for me. It's the place where you go to escape the confines of society and finally feel everything freely. One time when I was sad, I came here and I looked at the water and I thought, I wish I could just jump into the creek and let it carry me away and let me purge all of these emotions until I was ready to climb out and be reborn again. And that's what this series is about. I do often think about Ophelia when I come here. I think about how tragic it was that she was a wild woman who never got to be wild. I also think about how things are simultaneously different, but also so much the same even now. This is one of my favorite rituals. There's something so soothing about giving up your burdens to a body of water. The river spirits here can handle everything that's too heavy for us mortals. So let's throw some petals into the water for Ophelia. Ophelia, we owe it to you to stop being good girls and live true to our wild natures, because you couldn't. Let us all release the good girl inside us so that we can actually change the way things are. Amen.